And you can, as we mentioned Sunday morning, you can take that schedule that I put together a while back and kindle your fire with it or whatever you need to do. As I started, especially in this particular section, I began to realize that we don't need as much time with it because it's just the history. I mean, there's not a lot of new information, not a lot of things that we need to discuss, just things we need to understand. And so I'll move pretty quickly. In fact, we may cover as many as 4 chapters tonight, believe that or not. But we'll see. That may not happen because I'll slow down a little bit in chapter 44 in specific. There's some things there that I think we can gain some insight about. So we may not make it that far, but we'll see what happens as we move forward together in our study this evening. But for now, we're in chapter 43, and just a quick refresher, because I know we're going quickly through some of the history, but Babylon's kind of made its last, well, we've been talking about it. It's hard in Jeremiah because here are a couple chapters who we're going to go back and talk about again. You may read far enough ahead. We're going to go back and talk about Jehoiakim again. Okay? And Jeremiah's going to back us up again historically. And so we move forward, and then he comes back and he tells us something about a king that was actually prior to Zedekiah, and we move forward again. And so historically it's hard to kind of keep up with the book of Jeremiah because he doesn't stay on a chronological order. He tells us a little bit about history, and he'll build up, and then he'll say something that may have happened 20 years prior to that. And so it's hard to think of it from a chronology standpoint, but that's kind of where we are in the moment. In the last few chapters, basically Jerusalem has fallen, Babylon has taken over, Nebuchadnezzar had put Nebuzaradan as captain over the region. Nebuzaradan chose a man by the name of whom to be governor over the area? Yeah, Gedaliah or Gedalia, however you want to say it. That's probably more accurate than the way I've been saying it. But Gedaliah here, he gets put in charge, and some guys around him, particularly a man by the name of Johanan, right? A man by the name of Johanan warns Gedaliah that what's going to happen? Okay, Ishmael, I gave you his name away already. Ishmael's going to take your life. He doesn't like the fact that you're being allowed to be ruler over the region, because Ishmael claimed that he was part of what? The seed royal, right? His state of claim is that I'm part of the heritage and I deserve to be ruler over the area. And Ishmael, was lined up with what nation? The Ammonites, right? The Ammonites. If you recall, when he tried to take the people with him, he tried to take them captive back to the Ammonites. And when he got in some trouble, he fled to Ammon, because he went in and eventually does kill Gedaliah, and because of that, the Johanan comes back along and he kills those who were with Ishmael, and Ishmael now flees to Ammon, and then Gedaliah and all the men come to Jeremiah and they ask him to ask the Lord what basic question?
What should we do?
What should we do? Okay, and in general, what do they really want to know? Can we do what? Can we go to Egypt? Okay, that we pushed Ishmael away. We're afraid if we stay here that Babylonians are going to find out that maybe we were part of that clan of people that put Gedaliah to death, and then Nebuchadnezzar will put us to death. And so they're afraid of Babylon. So their thought processes are, let's get to Egypt. And they make this basic vow. Well, what was the basic vow that they made?
Do whatever the Lord says.
That's right. You beseech the Lord, and whatever He says, that's what we'll do. What Jeremiah told the Lord said. Stay put. If you'll just stay right here, my judgment of the land is done. I have done what I intended to do. You can stay and be a remnant right here where you are. You don't need to be afraid of the Babylonians, because who's in charge of them? God is, right? He's the one that set them up as power. He's the one that used them. And so I've got control over them. Don't be afraid of them. You sit still and do what God has asked. But if you go to Egypt, what's going to happen? Okay, you'll die by the famine, by the sword. You'll be challenged. Stay put. God will respect you and bless you. You try to flee to Egypt, and you run down there instead, good things will not happen for you in that place. Go ahead, Rob.
You can sum it up in 6 words. Stay and live or go and die.
Yeah, your choice. Your choice. Stay put and survive this.
We probably put it shorter in this world today rather than give them a lengthy dissertation.
Right.
That was a summation.
That's the summation of what he was telling them to do. So, chapter 43, that's where we're at. So, Jeremiah tells them. They said whatever God says we'll do. Jeremiah tells them what God said. Do they like it? No, because why?
They're going to go
I want to go to Egypt, okay? They're like we are, right? We're perfectly contented with what God says until He disagrees with me. And once God disagrees with me, now I've got a problem, right? Now I've got some difficulty to address because God disagrees with me. And so we need to remember that there are going to be moments where I don't like what God has told me to do. But I need to listen anyway. I need to obey anyway. They didn't like it, but they got an option, and that is to obey and live, or disagree and die. So it comes to pass, verse 1 of chapter 43, Jeremiah had made an end of speaking unto all the people. The words of Jehovah their God wherewith Jehovah their God had sent him to them, even all these words. Then spake Azariah the son of Hoshai, and Johanan the son of Kareah, and all the proud men, interesting word, but all the proud men, saying unto Jeremiah, Thou speakest what?
Falsely.
What did men like Zedekiah and Jehoiakim and all those guys say about Jeremiah?
He speaks false.
He speaks falsely. Had there been plenty of evidence that Jeremiah hadn't been speaking falsely?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had all the evidence they needed to know that what Jeremiah had been saying all along was exactly what happened. The more you resist, the more trouble you'll be in, the more challenges you'll face. They have every reason to believe Jeremiah, really in some senses no reason to disbelieve him. The only reason from a human logical standpoint you might come up with for why they may be resistant is what was the basic argument people made about Jeremiah? That he was a what? In relationship to Babylon.
Traitor.
Yeah, right. He was a traitor of the Jews because he kept telling them, submit to Babylon and live, resist and die. It makes him sound like he's a
Babylon.
Yeah, he's a Babylonian. It makes him sound like he's siding with the Babylonians. Who was he siding with? God. Okay? You know, sometimes we use the phrase guilt by association. And there may be some truth to that on some occasions. But not all the time. It's not always true. There's not always the kind of connections that people try to make. I've heard people, even in discussions, they'll say, well, you sound like this guy, therefore you must believe like that guy. Or you sound like this individual, therefore you must believe like that. And that's not always the case. It may sound like Jeremiah came straight out of the Chaldean schools and was just trying to perpetuate the Babylonian thought. But it's not. The truth lies in the very simplistic fact that he was on God's side. And what God had determined was the Babylonians were going to win this victory. And people could make arguments all day long that Jeremiah is just a Babylonian in Jewish disguise. But he wasn't. Their fear is that because he's so, in their minds, interconnected with the Babylonians, he's just trying to keep us here till what? The Babylonians come back and kill us. Okay? And so they'll even kind of so much as say that later on. And so there's a very odd dynamic. So you're false. You're not telling us the truth about what God has said. He hasn't told you to say these things. Into verse 2, you shall not go into Egypt to sojourn there. He didn't say any of that. That's their argument. But Baruch the son of Neriah setteth thee on against us, to deliver us into the hand of the Chaldeans, that they may put us to death and carry us away captive to Babylon. Who's Baruch, by the way? Who was he?
He's the scribe.
All right, he's that scribe. Jeremiah keeps calling. When Jeremiah can't go deliver the message personally, and he's got to need somebody to kind of write it down for him, and so he'll call for Baruch. Baruch writes it down, and it works out. So the challenge of all this is is that he's none of these things are accusing him of, but you're afraid you're going to get handed over and all this. It's not going to happen. So Johanan speaks up, verse 4. And all the captains of the forces and all the people obeyed not the voice of Jehovah to dwell in the land of Judah. But Johanan, the son of Kareah, and all the captains of the forces took all the remnant of Judah that were returned from all the nations whither they had been driven to sojourn in the land of Judah. The men, the women, the children, the king's daughters, every person that Nebuzaradan had, the captain of the guard had left with Gedaliah. And they come, verse 7, into the land of Egypt, for they obeyed not the voice of Jehovah, and they came unto Paden, or however you want to say that. So, they completely reject. They said, whatever God says, that's what we'll do, Jeremiah. You just ask him. But as soon as he said, well, God wants you to stay put. No, he couldn't have said that. You're not telling us the truth. You're lying about it. So off to Egypt we go. So they end up setting up, if you will, camp in Egypt down around Paden, which is towards the north. If you look on the map that is on the screen, you'll see a red dot where Migdol is, which that place will come up in this conversation as well. You'll see a handful of references like Migdol, Tapanese, Memphis will be mentioned later in the narrative. But this is basically the region that you're dealing with. And if I shrink it out a little bit for you, you can kind of tell in this larger, if you look at the bottom right corner, and looking in the larger area, you're not far from Judea into this. So they didn't go deep into Egypt. The point is, they get into Egypt, and they find places in which they can establish themselves in those locations.
I think in Egypt can solve all the problems.
Right. And you know, there's a false sense of what Egypt is going to be able to do in terms of protecting him from Babylon, for that matter, which he'll deal with before it's all said and done. So he tells them in verse 9, take great stones in thy hand, and hide them in the mortar in the brickwork, which is at the entry of Pharaoh's house in Tapanese, in the sight of the men of Judah. And say unto him, thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will send and take Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will set his throne upon these stones that I have hid, and he shall spread his royal pavilion over them. So he says, I want you to go mark a spot in the wall, and I want you to make note that I'm going to let Nebuchadnezzar come down and sit on, bring his throne and establish himself down here. You think you have fled to Egypt to protect you from Babylon. You have fled into Egypt to fall to Babylon. The way you could have protected yourself from Babylon is to do what God said and stay put. But because you chose to flee and run to Egypt on your own, now you're going to face the consequences, and Nebuchadnezzar shows up, because he's going to come, verse 11, he'll smite the land of Egypt. Such as far for death shall be given to death, and such as are for captivity to captivity, and such as for the sword. And so, lots of things. Some will go captive, some will just die, some will be wounded by the sword. There'll be lots of things that potentially can happen to folks here, Jeremiah says, and the challenges they will have to face because of that. I'll kindle a fire in the houses of the gods of Egypt, and he shall burn them and carry them away captive. He shall array himself with the land of Egypt, as a shepherd putteth on his garment, and he shall go forth from thence in peace. He shall also break the pillars of Beth-Shemesh, which is in the land of Egypt, and the houses of the gods of Egypt shall he burn with fire. They thought wisdom dictated that they flee to Egypt, and they ran right into what? Right into a hornet's nest. They ran right into trouble. They ran from protective, peaceful scenarios and ran right into trouble. And how many times in our lives have we ran right into trouble when God said, if you would just stay here in relationship with me, if you stay faithful, if you will stay right here where you belong, I'll bless you, I'll help you, I'll strengthen you, but we choose to run where? Right into the heart of difficulty. It's amazing sometimes how we'll leave a perfectly comfortable circumstance for a miserable one. And men have been doing it for ages. men have left perfectly comfortable scenarios and landed themselves thinking it was going to be better, and landed in misery. How many times have you stood in the line at a grocery store or a bank, right? And you see the opening. There it is, right? 2 people in this line, 62 in this one. It's got to work better over there, right? And you leave that perfectly good spot that you had, and you go over here, and that person's got 62 items that need price checked, and 32 things that they want to do, and 85 coupons in their pocket, and you watch those 32 people leave,
They're still there.
and you're still standing, right? We do it all the time. Now that's a trivial matter, right? But we do it with life too. When we're in perfectly spiritual settings, good settings for us, but we're just always looking for something different, something different, something different. And we sometimes find ourselves not just in something different, but something much more challenging and difficult than we had prior. And that's exactly what they're doing. And the saddest part is sometimes we do it mistakenly. They did it knowingly and by choice. They were told this is what's going to be the result, and they ignored it.
Do you think Nebuchadnezzar is taking vengeance on him because of Kadeh is dead? He thought maybe they're involved in that?
Well, that's what they're afraid of. But God's told them, He's not going to do anything to you. You know, that's the problem here, is they refuse to listen to what God had told Jeremiah to tell them.
Since they took off running, he's come after them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you make yourself look guilty, by the way, when you're running instead of just staying put.
and what are the Egyptians going to think of them? I mean, Nebuchadnezzar hasn't bothered Egypt at all. Now he's coming for them.
Yeah. When they've had, their moments in Egypt just kind of fled and stayed out of them. Anytime they kind of pressed the issue, they would get knocked back. But now because he owns he's controlling the stretch of land. Before, he had this stretch of land, Judea, that stood between Babylon and Egypt. Now he's controlling Judea. Now he's got a path directly in to go down and deal with Egypt now.
Am I right in understanding some of these verses that these people gathered up everybody they could and leave Jeremiah?
Yeah, Jeremiah's with them. Yeah, because he's still talking to them. Yeah, and so they gather up. The intent of that is all these people you had a remnant that was still there, and then people got word that basically the fighting was over, and so some of them started to trickle back, and so you got this small little remnant, and they're trying to decide what to do, and they ignore God. So the people didn't listen leadership didn't listen, and even this remnant, even the group that had witnessed it all, and still thought somehow they could ignore the prophet Jeremiah, do the exact opposite of what God had said, and they get a different outcome. Even though every evidence shows them something that the truth doesn't matter.
Do you think that why they took Jeremiah and Barak is because they still want, like people today, they live a life of sin, but they still want to go to church to look like they're religious. And he being their only religious tie to God, we're forcing him to go with us. It's just, we're not going to listen to him, but we're going to take him with us anyway.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I don't know. In some ways, I don't know that Jeremiah's got much choice in the matter.
No,
you can't, not going to be able to survive on his own. And so I don't know of any specific indication of what their thought processes were.
Would there have been many Babylonians left in the area?
Well,
from the armies that had come and fought?
Well, it doesn't appear to be, because the ones that Nebuchadnezzar had left when Ishmael came and killed them.
Yeah.
So Ishmael killed the ones that Nebuchadnezzar had left, and the Jews as well. But so there wasn't really any leadership role. So they've got a short window of time here. In fact, they've even already lost. I think, was there not a 10-day moment somewhere in that? When Jeremiah first asked, I believe it was 10 days later before the message came. And so they've had some time here, and the longer they wait, the more likely that somebody's going to get word of what had happened there at Mizpah. And so you know, they're thinking, we got to go. We got to go. And that was the choice that they decided to make. Jump to chapter 20 or 44. Remember, there's no questions in your worksheets concerning until I think chapter 47, when the author of the worksheets gets back to actually sharing. Chapter 44. So the word comes to Jeremiah concerning all the Jews that dwelled in the land of Egypt, that dwelled at Migdol, and at Tahpanhes, and at Memphis, and in the country of Pathros. And if you recall, I'll show you that one more time real quick. But again, these are all kind of northern areas, except for Memphis, kind of is a little closer. But for the most part, we're talking about in the northern part of Egypt that most of these things are occurring in. So the word comes to Jeremiah. God says in verse 2, "You have seen all the evil that I have brought upon it, Jerusalem, upon all the cities of Judah. And behold, this day they are a desolation, and no man dwelleth therein. Because of their wickedness which they have committed to provoke me to anger, and that they went to burn incense and to serve other gods, that they knew not, neither they nor ye, nor your father." So for the several verses, he does what? Basically, it reminds them of what?
Just whatever.
History, what just happened.
Yeah, of what, a history of what has happened and why. And that's been part of the accounting of Jeremiah throughout. God's judgment over them because they left Him, they served other gods, they did not honor Him, they did not serve Him, and all the challenges. Verse 4, he reminds them that I kept sending prophets and sending prophets, warning. But verse 5 says they didn't what? They hearkened not, or they didn't listen. They didn't incline their ears to turn from their wickedness, to burn no incense unto other gods. Because of that, verse 6, my wrath and mine anger was poured out forth, and was kindled in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. And they are wasted and desolate, as it is this day. Therefore, in light of all this, now thus saith Jehovah, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, wherefore commit ye these great evil against your own souls, to cut off from you man and woman, infant and suckling, out of the midst of Judah, to leave you none remaining, in that you provoke me unto anger with the works of your hands, burning incense unto other gods in the land of Egypt, whither you are gone to sojourn, that ye may be cut off, and that ye may be a curse and a reproach among all the nations of the earth. First thing Jeremiah gets told from God that he needs to go tell the people is that they witnessed all the things that God had done to Jerusalem and to Judah. They were witnesses to it. They saw the desolation. They saw the challenges, the difficulties that they had encountered there. They were witnesses to it. And yet they did what? And they still disobeyed. They had been given every witness necessary to know that you should not reject the message of Jeremiah because he speaks the truth concerning God. They had every reason to believe Jeremiah, no good reason to disagree, especially in light of what they had been witnesses to. It's like somebody watching somebody do something, and that person is struggling and injuring themselves or whatever, and I decide that what? I'm going to give that a try, right? I'm going to do that anyway. You know, here's a guy, and he's maimed, but I can do it. I can manage it. That's what they've done. God destroyed Judah. And in the wake of all that, these people said, how do we be different for us? It's amazing how men's minds can convince themselves that they can do the same things that others have been punished and destroyed for and get a different outcome. And it just doesn't work that way. And to boot, what's happening when they get down to Egypt, what do they start doing according to verse 8?
Idols again.
Yeah. Not only did you reject your opportunity to be blessed, not only did you ignore all the witness and testimony of what I did to Judah, not only did you have every reason to listen to Jeremiah and you still didn't listen to him, but when you got to Egypt, you started doing the very things that I destroyed Judah for to begin with. I mean, you haven't learned what? Anything. Can you imagine the utter frustration of our God when He looks at His people and He sees a people that refuses to learn anything? No matter how much happens, no matter what judgments occur, no matter what punishment He deals out, they are still ignoring everything that God has given them. That's frustrating. And because of it, God's going to challenge them in ways that they never anticipated.
Shows you how hard people get in their minds.
It's
You
amazing.
can't break in.
And I guess it is a reminder of that, Randy, that though it's frustrating, disappointing, discouraging, throw whatever adjective you want at it, but the truth of the matter is there's still people just like them today. They will have every opportunity to hear and to know and to understand what God wants, but eventually if the heart doesn't receive it, then the life won't live it. And that's always been the case. It's sad, but it's always been the case. That even folks who are well educated know what God wants, some still refuse.
Anything is better than God.
Yeah. And he says in verse 9, how forgetful you've become. You've forgotten the wickedness of your fathers. You've forgotten the wickedness of the kings of Judah. You've forgotten the wickedness of your wives and your own wickedness. The wickedness of your wives which they committed in the land of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. I mean, how soon you've forgotten how wicked the place had become that God wanted to destroy it to begin with. Interesting, verse 10. They are not humbled, even unto this day. Neither have they feared, nor walked in my law, nor in my statutes, that I set before you and before your fathers. How many public figures have we watched stand before us and claim an apologetic tone, and then just no time whatsoever after that, they're right back in the very same struggle or problem, and another scandal was known or another thought, and there's no humility whatsoever. We have soapbox. We have created a society that would rather hear the right words than to see the right actions. We have become so trained that if people say the right things, then I'm content with that. And because of that, all you got to do is read off the script. If you can read the script right, and you can read and say the words that people want to hear in certain circumstances, you don't have to make any changes at all. You don't have to be any different. You don't have to change any behavior. You don't have to do anything different. All you got to do is make sure you say the right things. Don't dare say the wrong things. Okay? Don't dare say the politically incorrect things, because that'll raise the ire of people. It's amazing how we have become so controlled by words and absolutely ignore the actions of people anymore. People aren't held accountable. Think about it. Think about the world we live in. No one is held accountable for what they do. They're only held accountable for what they say. You can do anything. You can't say certain things. You can do anything. And it's an amazing set of circumstances, the world we live in. And there's not much humility in that case. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, there's a saying that history repeats itself. And I think of what happened to Rome and why. And I believe our country now is doing the same thing. But even worse than that, in the Lord's church, people begin to say, no, I think this is a better idea. I think this is a better idea. And don't have authority for it.
Right.
So we all, I think the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence. So we start moving away from what God says.
An early step to real change is to be humbled by that which caused me to need to change. I need to be humbled by it. He says to them, you weren't humbled. You weren't humbled by it. It didn't make you fear. It didn't move you to my law. It didn't move you to my statutes. It didn't do anything. You're no different than your fathers, and you had every reason to be different. And because of that, behold, I will set my face against you for evil, cut off all Judah. Here was this little remnant that could have stayed in the land and just kind of existed there until the full captivity was over. But now the real desolation comes because this remnant came back to Mizpah, and God said, hang out there and live peaceably and you'll be fine. And now the nation becomes completely desolate because the handful that remained decided to leave against God's instructions. And he says, I'll take the remnant of Judah that have set their faces to go into the land of Egypt to sojourn there, and they shall all be consumed. They shall fall, they shall be consumed by the sword, by famine, they shall die, from the least even to the greatest, by the sword, by the famine. They shall be in execration, and astonishment, and a curse, and a reproach. For I will punish them that dwell in the land of Egypt, as I have punished Jerusalem, by the sword, by the famine, by the pestilence, so that none of the remnant of Judah that are gone into the land of Egypt to sojourn there shall escape or be left to return into the land of Judah, to which they have a desire to return to dwell there. For none shall return save such as shall escape. So we've got a small little remnant. And God says, by the time we're done, there's just going to be what?
None.
Yeah, none, or just a small portion that might escape, he says there in verse 14. But it's no nation at all. So, notice the reaction. That's the message. Okay? You chose to ignore God. You went to Egypt against His wishes. You've adopted Egyptian culture. This is what God's bringing. And then the men who knew that their wives burned incense unto other gods, verse 15. And all the women that stood by, a great assembly, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt in Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of Jehovah, we will not hearken unto thee. The problem is, it's not a matter of them hearkening unto Jeremiah. The problem is they're not hearkening unto God. And but they have been battered and beaten, besieged, pushed out of their homeland, an opportunity to return to it. And not only has what God done not humbled them, but they've actually reached a point where they're just saying, we're not listening. We will serve. Notice, not only are they not humble, but they're flat out what? They're rebellious and arrogant. I mean, notice verse 17. We will certainly perform every word that is going forth out of our mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings and our princes in the cities of Judah, and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. For a while, that was true, wasn't it? For a while, they had plenty. Things were good. They remained idolatrous, and they felt like that was beneficial. But what had recent history told them? That wasn't the case. And it wasn't the Queen of Heaven, and it wasn't the gods and the goddesses you've been worshiping. It was God of Heaven, Jehovah God. And when He decided to take the blessings away, and when He decided to bring judgment against you, and when He decided to bring challenge, He brought it. But they just said, I don't care. We want to burn incense, we're going to burn it. We want to pour out drink offerings, verse 19, we're going to do it. If we make her cakes to worship her, or pour out drink offerings unto her without our husbands. Then Jeremiah said unto all the people, to the men and to the women, even to all the people that had given him that answer, saying, The incense that ye burned in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem, ye and your fathers, your kings and your princes, and the people of the land, did not Jehovah remember them? And came it not into his mind, so that Jehovah could not longer bear, because of the evil of your doings, and because of the abominations which ye have committed? Therefore is your land become a desolation, and an astonishment, and a curse without inhabitant, as it is this day. Sometimes people will look at clear and concise evidence that you couldn't argue against if you wanted to. I mean, it is as plain as it can be as what happened to Judah. You cannot argue that it did not become desolate. You cannot argue that it did not have the sword. You cannot argue that it didn't have the famine and the pestilence. All the evidence is necessary, and here's a fella, a remnant of people who are looking at that scenario and saying, I don't think it really happened. I'm not saying coincidence. Pure coincidence. We were really benefited and great things happened while we were worshiping the Queen of Heaven. When we were doing all these idols and all the... Even in the face of every ounce of evidence is right in front of them, they're still ignoring it all.
Well, they know what happened, but they don't believe that God had anything to do with it. It was just all those bad Babylonians.
There is a sense that they have convinced themselves that this was never about God, Jehovah God. This has always been about the Babylonians. And you can sense that from their sheer hatred for the Babylonians and their desire to never want to do anything that would put them under the thumb of the Babylonians. So there is a sense that they're refusing to recognize what the real source here is. And that's Jehovah. But all the evidences point to it, all the messages that Jeremiah brought, everything. But they're still in denial. Moreover, Jeremiah said unto all the people and to all the women, hear the word of Jehovah. All Judah that are in the land of Egypt, thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, saying, ye and your wives have both spoken with your mouths, and with your hands have fulfilled it, saying, we will surely perform our vows that we have vowed, to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her. Establish then your vows and perform your vows. You make your choices. And bring the consequences if that's what you're going to do. Therefore hear the word, verse 26. All Judah that dwell in the land of Egypt, behold, I have sworn by my great name, saith Jehovah, that my name shall no more be named in the mouth of any man of Judah, in all the land of Egypt, saying, as the Lord Jehovah liveth. It's scary. They're going to reach a point where they don't even do what? They don't even mention who. They don't even mention Jehovah, if I'm understanding that right. Behold, I have sworn by my great name, saith Jehovah, that my name shall no more be named in the mouth of any man of Judah. They will just become the idolatrous people they want to become. You made a promise, you've made a vow, you said, we're going to worship the Queen of Heaven, we're going to do it, we don't care what Jeremiah says, do it. But he said, Jehovah's name won't be connected to you. It will not be spoken of among you anymore. All those who live in Egypt. Behold, I watch over them for evil and not for good. And all the men of Judah that are in the land of Egypt shall be consumed by the sword and by the famine, until there be an end of them. They that escape the sword shall return out of the land of Egypt into the land of Judah, few in number. And all the remnant of Judah that are going into the land of Egypt to sojourn there shall know whose word shall stand, mine or theirs. That's powerful. I want you to recognize what he just said. He says, when this is all said and done, there'll be no question of whose word was true and whose wasn't. There'll be no question as to where truth lied and where it did not lie. Mine or theirs, God says. This shall be the sign unto you, saith Jehovah, that I will punish you in this place, that ye may know that my word shall surely stand against you for evil. Thus saith Jehovah, behold, I will give Pharaoh Hophra, king of Egypt, into the hand of his enemies, and into the hand of them that seek his life, as I gave Zedekiah, king of Judah, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who was his enemy, and sought his life. I've already proven to you that I can do this. You've made your choice. Go live your vows. Go do what you're going to do. But when I bring Nebuchadnezzar down against Egypt and against the Pharaoh, you're going to get washed up in that judgment as well. You walked right into a place that I'm bringing condemnation to through the hands of the Babylonians, and you're going to face the same sword, the same famine, the same pestilence, the same challenges because of your decision and choice to go down and live as an Egyptian and conduct yourself in that fashion. It's really sad, to think that here was a remnant. Here's a group of people who escaped, who survived. These are survivors. And they get an opportunity to live a peaceable existence as a remnant in their homeland, but choose to run to Egypt instead, even though they're warned, and now they're going to get washed up in the challenges that God brings against them. Thoughts about that section?
Yeah, I was curious why there was a few that was allowed to escape. Then that last verse there kind of puts it in perspective. They're witnesses
Yeah.
of His word.
Right, especially if you add verse 28 as well, that they'll know, mine or theirs, who was right in this matter, and there will be a few who will be able, and you hope that when the captivity is over and those folks start coming back out of Babylon, and a few of these folks end up back, that you'll have both experiences that would hopefully guide them back towards Jehovah. We'll find that that's not necessarily what completely happens in some senses.
Was the Queen of Heaven, was that part of the Egyptian worship too?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thought about that after the fact tonight, and I didn't take time, but I did not.
I know
look
they
that up.
worshiped the Pharaoh, and I just wondered who he worshipped. Maybe it's the Queen of Heaven. I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't take time to look up.
In the notes the guy has, it's the Ashtoreth.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to see if I can find a little more detail for you. I don't know exactly if there's something we can relate it to more specifically or not. Jump to chapter 45 real quick. We got about 4 minutes. And I think we got about 5 verses. Short little chapter. There's not, but it's a chapter that quickly in 5 verses deals with who? Okay, Baruch or Barak, however you want to pronounce that. What's weird is now where are we in timing?
We're down in Egypt.
But now we're not.
Not yet.
Now we're not. Okay. In verse 2, or verse 1 rather, he says this message came to Jeremiah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. So Judah still got a king, it's Jehoiakim, and that's not even the last king. So again, we're not dealing with chronology here. We dealt with chronology for a little bit, and we get to where the people fled to Egypt, and God gives His warnings and what's going to happen to them. But here's this moment where we're going to go back and talk about Baruch for a moment. But I believe the significance of that, and you might wonder, and I wonder a little bit, because keep in mind, you don't have, and I know it's hard for us. We get this image that they knocked a hole in a cave somewhere one day, and there was the King James Version of the Bible. And you know what I mean? That's our image. I'm telling you, that's the image people have. That we knocked, we found some archaeological dig, and poof, there was the King James Version. The book of Jeremiah is compiled. You find a morsel here, and a morsel here, and a morsel here, and you find different manuscripts, and men had to piece it all together. I think the providence of God is involved, don't misunderstand me. But you didn't have it, Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 1, through Jeremiah chapter 52, it's not the way they found it. Had to piece it together. So you got this snippet. Where does it fit? Well, they choose to put this piece as chapter 45 of the book of Jeremiah. My assumption would be, in part, because why, back you up a little bit, what did they say about why they should flee and not trust Jeremiah?
Because he was for the Babylonians.
He's for the Babylonians. And whose name did they mention? Baruch. They mentioned him. They mentioned Baruch the scribe when they were giving their reasonings as to why they needed to flee and not trust Jeremiah. And Baruch, okay, you're just because of Baruch, you're telling us this. And So my gut tells me that may be why. So now let's go back and remind ourselves. Jeremiah writes this down, and it ends up here reminding us that way back during Jehoiakim, God spoke or thus saith Jehovah the God of Israel unto thee, O Baruch, thou didst say, Woe is me now, for Jehovah hath added sorrow to my pain. I am weary with my groaning, and I find no rest. Thus shalt thou say unto him, Thus saith Jehovah, Behold, that I have built will break down, and that which I have planted will pluck up, and this in the whole land. Seekest thou great things for thyself? Seek them not. For behold, I will bring evil upon all flesh, saith Jehovah, but thy life will I give unto thee for a prey in all places whither thou goest. So they're getting traipsed around. He reminds, in a sense, Jeremiah is recording this, that Baruch was told way back in the time of Jehoiakim that don't make big what? Don't make big plans. Okay, notice that he said, don't seek great things for yourself. Verse 5. Baruch, you're going to have a pretty rough life. I'm going to let you live, but it's not going to be pretty. And it's going to be challenging. And he warns him ahead of the kind of life. And guess what? That's exactly what happens. And he gets drugged down here in Egypt with all these challenges.
Hey, Queen of Heaven. I was trying to remember, but I think back in the earlier chapters of Jeremiah, when the Israelite nation was split, I think Judah was identified as the Queen of Heaven. I think. But I'm not positive.
All right, Lord willing, when we come back, then we'll look at chapters 46 and potentially chapter 47 as well.